Sir Patrick Stewart. Very nice to meet you. Before we talk about season 2 of Blunt Talk, I want to go back to the Golden Globes when you got the nomination for the show. What was it like being a first-year show and being recognized by the Hollywood Foreign Press?
It was simply marvelous. We were all very excited because it was, if Walter is getting a nomination, then the show is getting a nomination, which is very, very encouraging in a first season because there's a lot of competition these days. Mm-hmm. And we were most grateful and happy to have it.
Nice. I've seen the first 2 episodes of season 2. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a little love story going on with your character, Walter. What can you tell us about that?
Well, women play a very important part in Walter's life. And he has a feeling that he has perhaps lost his way for good and all, romantically, and that happiness, certainly happiness with a partner, will never come about for him. And then on the bus one night, because Harry and Walter now take the bus to work because they are serious, devoted environmentalists, Harry, looking out of the window, thinks he spots a woman, and he stops the bus by telling the driver, "Stop the bus, I'm Walter Blunt, for God's sake, stop the bus." And he's such an asshole. And it turns out the woman he thought he saw was a woman he had an affair with 30 years earlier. And in talking to Harry, he describes her as the love of his life. But she dumped him. And he thinks he saw her. And this becomes an obsession, and he tracks her down, finds her, and they meet after 30 years. And actually, this, as like a number of things, this story is based on a little period in my life. When Jonathan Ames and I first met and talked, we didn't really talk at all about storylines or plots and so forth, other characters. We talked about ourselves, our lives, how we grew up, what we cared about, what made us laugh, and so forth. And we told anecdotes, and that was one of them. Well, so it's kind of personal story for me. But the woman he meets is now involved as a journalist herself in investigating a possible corruption scandal surrounding the whole vexed question of recycled water or desalinization in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And what makes it different from episode 1 is that this whole story is carried over the whole 10 episodes and is not resolved until the final episode. Now, I know that the idea of watching a comedy half-hour show, which is about recycled water, doesn't sound too encouraging. Believe me, it is as funny, as crazy, reckless, chaotic as the first season. But it gives Walter and the show, Rosalie and their colleagues, a passionate, serious subject that they continually have to return to. And because they pursue this subject so passionately, they get into trouble, all kinds of trouble. Walter actually spends several days in jail in this episode.
Exciting. Does Blunt Talk give you a new appreciation for cable news? Does it make you look at it in a different lens?
Yes, because I now watch the performance of the newsreader much more analytically. I'm a news junkie. I cannot throw out an unread newspaper. I read the New York Times every day. I read the Los Angeles Times most days. I read the Guardian newspaper. I'm about 5 days behind on the Guardian because I read it online. Why am I a news junkie? I'm an actor. I don't read the gossip columns. I don't read, the entertainment papers. But news I cannot put down, even though it's news that will never have any impact on my life, although these days it would seem that news that happens anywhere in the planet is likely to have impact where you are. And I've been involved in politics. When I say involved in politics, I've been passionately interested in politics all my life. I committed my first act of civil disobedience at the age of 5, when, against the instructions of a policeman in England, I walked up and down outside a polling station carrying a placard, encouraging people to vote for the Labour candidate, the socialist candidate. A policeman told me to move on, and I insulted him, and he threatened to hit me around the head. And then I pointed out where my father was and what he looked like, and the policeman had second thoughts. So I still am. I'm caught up in this wacky world of the present presidential elections here. I compulsively read everything. I think if I were given one of those desert island moments, you know, if you could have a page from a newspaper delivered to you every day, what would it be? It could be the front page of the Guardian, whatever, or the sports pages of the Daily Mail. And I would choose the op-ed page of the New York Times because it's dazzling, it's brilliant in every respect, not just for the brilliance of the writing and the fact that I happen to agree with much that is written, but because of the diversity. There are often quite contrasting opinions being expressed. I am sick of Donald Trump and his carryings on. There was one day a couple of weeks ago when every single article on the op-ed page and in the actual editorials were about Donald Trump. And oh, for heaven's sake, let's move on.
Right. It'll go on for another couple months, I'm sure.
Well, you know, I have to leave the United States at the end of June to work in London for 6 months. So I won't be here when the big day arrives. I'm disappointed that I won't be here.
Final question. This might be a tough one. I don't know. Do you have a favorite moment from season 1, a favorite scene, a Walter scene?
I think I have to go back to find a favorite scene in season 1, right to the first episode. 2 scenes, actually, and there was scene 1 and scene 2 of episode 1, season 1. The first was a conversation I'm having with a barman in a rather nice bar in LA. Too much to drink already, garrulous, and I think tiresomely drilling the ear of this bartender. And it was a brilliantly written scene. It nearly didn't make it into the first episode. Wow. They wanted to open with something a little bit more dramatic and sensational. Instead, there were just 2 people with their heads close together having a conversation about the Duke of Windsor and his American wife. Right after that, Walter is in his car driving home, drunk, high, and getting higher, and singing rap music on, along with his radio. When he picks up a woman and takes her, she suggests that he take her down an alleyway where they have a conversation and some affection. And it is such a beautiful and touching and important scene in the series. It's what launched for me the personality and nature of Walter Blunt. And I was so lucky to have the dazzling and brilliant Trace Lizette playing a trans woman in this episode. So beautifully and sympathetically. I look back to those early days with great warmth. Not that we haven't had many marvelous days since, we have.
Well, we are very excited for season 2 this fall on Stars. Thank you.
So
nice
am
to
I.
meet you.
Thank you.
Great.